A couple weeks ago, I put out a short form content video that addressed the things that destroy a midlife lady's metabolic health and also lead to weight gain. And boy, did you guys listen and respond. A few of the things I addressed were not skipping meals, not restricting calories, not eating enough protein, choosing HIIT style workouts over strength training, running instead of walking, working out fasted, eating or drinking within 3 hours of your bedtime, and drinking coffee on an empty stomach. And today I am going to address the things that you guys asked questions about the most. And I will hit everything at some point, but in an effort to keep this video not too long, I'm just going to address the questions that were the most important to you. So the three I am going to address today are choosing walking over running, why you shouldn't eat or drink within 3 hours of your bedtime, and not drinking coffee on an empty stomach. Not working out fasted came in very close to the top three, so I will be addressing that in another video. But for today, we're just gonna address the three I mentioned. Welcome to Boom 50 Fitness. My name's Regan, and this is your channel for all things health and fitness in your 50s and beyond. I say this in so many of my videos, but I think it's really important for me to mention this again before I get started. And that is that every body is different. Your body is different than my body, and different than your neighbor's body, and different than your best friend's body. So if something is working for you, keep doing it. I just love to give options in case something is not working for you, especially if you feel like you could possibly be messing with your metabolic health and it's leading to weight gain. Because sometimes it's just one simple change that can make all the difference. And this channel is all about helping women in perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause to be as healthy and fit as they can be. And when it comes to our metabolic health, we have to tackle things a little bit differently than what we have done in the past. The first thing we're going to talk about today is choosing walking over running. And this one hits really close to home for me because I was a huge runner. I loved running. It was my number one source of cardio because I loved it so much. And we all know when it comes to exercise, you'll stick with the things that you like the most. But when I realized running wasn't working for me the way it used to, I made a big change, and that was to switch over from running to walking. And this is something I did in my mid to late 40s. So right around the time when a lot of women can be in that perimenopause stage, which we all know by now can last years and years and years and can start as early as around 35. And one of the reasons I realized it wasn't so great on my body anymore is after a long run, the next day, just walking downstairs would just bother my knees a little bit. And I started to develop shin splints more often. And I just felt like it wasn't serving me anymore, which makes complete sense because running during menopause or perimenopause or postmenopause can negatively affect a woman's body. And this is because it increases the risk of injuries, specifically tendon pain, which in my case is what I started to feel. And this is all because of the decline in estrogen levels, which affects connective tissue strength. And this can lead to slower recovery times and potentially making tendons more susceptible to damage. And this can manifest in all kinds of different issues like hip pain, plantar fasciitis, hamstring pain, and like what I mentioned, a little knee pain and shin splints. And like I said, this can all be due to that drop in estrogen levels. And because of that drop in estrogen levels, it leads to reduced collagen production. And we need that collagen production to help feed our tendons and ligaments. And without the right amount of collagen, those tendons and ligaments are not as resilient to stress, leading to injuries like I mentioned, along with things like tendonitis and stress fractures. And these hormone changes that are going on in a woman's body will lead to slower recovery times, which means the body's ability to repair damaged tissues is compromised. So if running is what you do and it's what you love to do and you're a midlife lady, maybe the thought of giving it up just seems too hard and maybe you just love it too much. But you have to remember that because these recovery times are going to be compromised, maybe you need to give yourself more recovery in between your runs. So if you're running 5 days a week, maybe cut it back to 2 or 3. But when I tell you the next thing I'm going to tell you, you may want to consider giving up running altogether and starting a walking program. And that is that running can lead to muscle loss. And again, this is due to declining estrogen levels. If you've been on this channel before, you know that as we get older, our muscle mass starts to decline, and we're doing everything in our power to maintain and maybe even build more muscle mass. But overdoing cardio, especially in a high impact form like running, can really eat away at the muscle that we are trying to maintain. Not to mention the change that this muscle loss will have in our performance. This will definitely lead to a decline in power and endurance. So if you're still running and your runs are just starting to get harder and harder instead of easier and easier, it's probably time to back off, at least a little bit. And another thing that we all probably know by now is that with the loss of muscle mass comes the loss of bone density. And the loss of bone density must be managed with nutrition and weight-bearing exercises. And without that, you may just be setting yourself up for a higher risk of injuries like I mentioned earlier. The other thing that hormonal changes may do is create some pelvic floor dysfunction. This is lovely. I know this seems like a lot of negative stuff, but I just want to make sure that you're aware of all these possibilities. So the problem with any sort of pelvic floor dysfunction is that running or any sort of high impact activity could cause a little incontinence. The other thing that happens in midlife is we have a bit of heat intolerance. So if you love running when it's hot outside, it's just going to be a little bit more difficult, especially if you are having symptoms like hot flashes as you go on your runs. And hot flashes will actually be exacerbated if you're running out in a hot climate, and it can just make your exercise really, really uncomfortable. And the last thing I am going to mention that could affect the enjoyment of your running as you get older is possible mood swings. Now, in my case, before I gave up running always changed my mood. It turned every day into a great day if I got a nice long run in. But with mood changes due to hormones, that might not be the case. Or a change in mood may just affect your motivation or the enjoyment of your running altogether. And so these are the reasons I say that maybe turn in those running sneakers for some good walking shoes. But realistically, you can just walk in your running shoes. I know that for some of you, this might be a hard pill to swallow. So just ease into it. Maybe just start backing off a little bit and maybe decreasing the amount of time you spend hitting the pavement, or maybe you slow down your pace. There are lots of things you can do to start heading towards a walking program and away from a running program. Again, I'm not telling you to give up running, but I can tell you from experience, my body has never felt better, or looked better for that matter. And I've never felt so strong and toned. So when we were younger, running would give us that really great toned look to our bodies. And as we get older, running can tend to do the opposite. Okay, enough on running. Let's move on to why you should not eat or drink anything within 3 hours of your bedtime. You want to make sure the food from your last meal is completely digested before you hit the sack. Otherwise, it will cause sleep disturbances. And those sleep disturbances can include heartburn and acid reflux. And why does it do that? Because if you're laying down right after you eat, it can cause the contents in your stomach to press up against your lower esophagus. And that's what can lead to the heartburn and the acid reflux. But the main thing I want to talk about is that it can cause a disruption in your circadian rhythm. Your circadian rhythm is a natural 24-hour cycle. And that cycle regulates various bodily functions, including sleep-awake patterns, hormone production, and body temperature. Understanding and maintaining a healthy circadian rhythm is super important for overall health and well-being. So there are a few different things you can do to maintain your circadian rhythm. One would be to make sure you're taking in enough calories throughout the day so that you're not hungry in the evening. And so that after your dinner time, you don't eat anything before you go to bed. And make sure that during the day you're eating high protein and high fiber meals. And not eating 3 hours before bed will help regulate your hormone cycle, meaning that your melatonin will naturally spike in the evening and your cortisol will naturally spike in the morning. And because I want you guys to take your sleep so seriously, it should be right up there with your nutrition and your fitness. Make sure you do not eat 3 hours before bed. So give yourself a cutoff time. My cutoff for eating is 7 p.m. most nights. But you know, if I go out to dinner, a lot of times I don't go out until after 7 o'clock. So on a rare occasion, or on average once a week, I eat a little bit later. But I usually go to bed a little bit later as well. So that 3-hour window usually works whether I go out or not. Usually is the operative word here. Okay, so let's move on to coffee. I think I mentioned in that video not to drink coffee on an empty stomach. But what I really want to bring home today when it comes to coffee is not to drink coffee first thing in the morning as soon as you wake up. And I'm going to get into exactly why, but why don't you try starting your morning with a tall glass of water first? Because waiting to drink coffee in the morning will help you feel more energized and alert. Wait, what? I thought coffee did the opposite, but hear me out. This is going to make a lot of sense. The reason you want to wait is because cortisol levels are naturally high in the morning. You guys probably all know by now that cortisol is considered the stress hormone. Now, because cortisol is naturally higher in the morning, drinking coffee too soon after you wake up can actually reduce the stimulating effects of caffeine. Yep, the opposite of what you really want it to do. Another reason is because of adenosine levels. Adenosine is a chemical that makes you feel tired, and it builds up as you're awake. Drinking coffee blocks adenosine, so it's more effective later in the morning. Interesting, right? And the other thing that coffee can do is if you drink it on an empty stomach, it can cause digestive issues. But don't come at me. I know a lot of you are going to tell me that you've been drinking coffee on an empty stomach for years and years now, and you have no digestive issues, and that's okay. Again, everybody and every body is different. So what's been working for you might not work for someone else. So if drinking coffee on an empty stomach's been working for you, that's awesome, but I still want you to take into consideration what happens to your cortisol levels and your adenosine levels when you drink coffee too soon after waking. Most experts agree that waiting 90 minutes to 2 hours after you wake up before having your first cup of coffee is kind of that sweet spot. So maybe if you think your body needs it first thing in the morning, maybe stretch it out to 30 minutes after you wake up. and then maybe you go for an hour, and then maybe you go for 90 minutes, and see how your body feels. You may find that you are way more productive. So the idea here is to wait till your cortisol levels have dropped naturally, which is usually somewhere between 9:30 and 11 a.m. So my recommendation would be to always start your morning with a big glass of water, and maybe you don't eat breakfast right away, but having a little something in your stomach before you have your coffee. And if you sip that coffee slowly, it will slow down the absorption of the caffeine. So sip that coffee slowly, take your time, enjoy each and every sip. All right, so I think you should try it, because I know a lot of you out there watching, as soon as you wake up, you are heading to that coffee machine or running across the street to Starbucks, or however you like to enjoy your coffee, you are just going for it first thing in the morning. But let's try it out and see how you feel, because I'd love to hear all about it. All right, you guys, so those are the 3 things I wanted to target today. The backing off on the running and switching over to walking was the first thing. Not eating at least 3 hours before bed, that was number 2. And when you have your first cup of coffee, that was number 3. So we hit them all today, but obviously I've got more to talk about in another video, but I hope you enjoyed the video today. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, smash that subscribe button, ring that notification bell, and that way you'll be the first to know when my next video drops. And leave me a comment down below. Let me know if you do any or all or none of these things and what works for you. I would love to hear from you. My name's Regan. This is Boom 50 Fitness, your new BFF. I will see you next Wednesday. Bye.